And welcome everybody to another episode of Yonkers Voice. Today we're going to be discussing what's been in the news, not lately, but been in the news for the last month or more, about the First Amendment. And today our guest is Robert Pargament, who has designed this flag back here, the Constitution flag. We're going to talk about that, but mostly we're going to talk about the First Amendment and what the First Amendment means to average man. And also need to issue a qualifier is that Yonkers Voice does not have a political opinion. We don't weigh to the right, we don't weigh to the left, we just ask for the facts. And with that, we're going to introduce Bob. And Bob, we're talking about the First Amendment today. Everybody's talking about the First Amendment. It's in many forms. Jimmy Kimmel, the right to speak out. You designed this flag to remind people of the First Amendment and their First Amendment rights. So in your opinion, what does that mean to you?
It means what's most sacred about this country. When I think of the Constitution, the First Amendment and all of the other amendments, all of the other freedoms within, I really think, as I was thinking about this earlier today, that I really think of this document, the Constitution, which guarantees our First Amendment rights, freedom of speech, freedom to assemble, freedom to practice religion, and freedom of the press, that this is a document of love, actually. It's an aspirational document that affirms what the Founding Fathers believed in us, that we were trustworthy enough to be able to operate with this document and all of the rights that are inherent within. It's a very uplifting document if you think about it. This is unique to America. Our constitutional republic uses this as the foundation, the infrastructure, the bones, basically, of how the entire country operates.
Let me interrupt you just for a
Yes.
second. But based on that, so the average guy that's walking across on Palisades Avenue or in this vicinity, what does the First Amendment mean to him?
It means that he has a right to say what he wants to say, whether I like it or I don't like it.
Bingo. But you know, you've heard the phrase, well, you know, you can't cry fire in a crowded theater. So what are the limits to the First Amendment?
That would be the limit. If you're endangering people, creating a dangerous situation, we have nuances within our understanding of the First Amendment to limit that kind of dangerous speech. Having said that, it's a very fine line. It's an interpretive line that courts ultimately decide upon. But there are cases in which, for example, years ago in Skokie, Illinois, Nazis wanted to demonstrate in Skokie in a very high concentrated area of Holocaust survivors. And even though it was anathema to me, it was really a turnoff to me, especially being from my background, I also realized there's a higher calling that people have to have the ability, because if I remove that right from those people to demonstrate, even though I might hate it, I'm also putting in jeopardy my rights to speak, because once you open that door to close it down, your rights are now compromised. Everybody's rights are compromised.
Exactly, which brings us to an issue that I know you hold quite dearly, was the temporary furlough of the Jimmy Kimmel show.
Right.
And he got back on the air, and I don't think people really saw that in the context of the First Amendment, but it boiled down to the First Amendment. And obviously based on the amount of viewership he got afterwards, the topic of the First Amendment really exploded. So was it right for ABC to cancel the show?
In my personal
Temporary
opinion,
cancel.
no. As one who used to work for ABC many years ago, as you did, no. This was freedom of speech. I would say that it was a very actually, in review of what he said, as I look back on it, not to get political about it, but I don't think there was anything all that outrageous. It was all of the commentary that he made in other monologues over the years that certain powers that be didn't want to have said. So they used this as an opportunity because there was this horrible situation in which this young guy, Charlie Kirk, was murdered. It was a horrific situation, but he was just simply making a political inside comment about what he thought was really going on, with all of the anger that was following that terrible situation, which was understandable, of course, in terms of people's reaction, the emotional reaction they had to watching this young 31-year-old guy get killed. God help us all that this kind of thing goes on. But the commentary was nothing to shut down an entire show. And once you start doing that, we know the Colbert Show was shut down not long before that, just about a month before that, or whatever it was. And what's next? What is next?
But to argue it from the other side, there are a lot of people, viewers who are Republican and who are very very pro Charlie Kirk, and should Jimmy Kimmel have even raised the issue of Charlie Kirk on that show? Should he have even mentioned it?
Yes, the answer is that it's not a question of should or shouldn't, it's a question of he has the right to do so, because this is a free speech society. We value this. That's why this flag was created, to revere these rights that we have. This is really the deeper meaning. This Constitution is the deeper meaning of who we are. The flag is a beautiful symbol of America. I love the flag. But the Constitution, which ensures these rights, again, is the infrastructure, the way the whole system works. Every country has a flag. Ours is, I think, the best. I love our flag. I well up when I hear the Star-Spangled Banner being sung at a baseball game. But the flag is the symbol of the overall entity called the United States of America. What really says who we are is this document right behind us.
But again, let's bring it down to the level of the everyday guy, and the everyday guy with the First Amendment. Let's say that some men or women are in a locker room. We're all familiar with unions. We're all familiar with what goes on in locker rooms, and they post something that is political on a locker room board. Do they have the right to do that? Suppose their employer comes in and says, well, John, this is inappropriate, and you're going to go before HR based on what you put on that bulletin board. Why is he not right in exercising his free speech?
I'm not saying he is wrong to do that. I don't know. There's that nuanced area of displaying something like that, your point of view in a private club, perhaps, if that's the example you're giving. That I leave to the constitutional lawyers, of which I'm not. I'm just a citizen, just a guy who's concerned that we preserve these liberties for all of us, left or right or in the middle, whatever it might be. That's the beauty of the whole system. It may be uncomfortable to see that posting on a board, let's say it's in some public space, but the law protects your ability to put those things up, my ability to put those things up, and that's what makes America really great.
To your point, recently Yonkers Voice had a post about a member of Yonkers Voice who is a teacher in the Yonkers public school system, who posted on his own page, not the page of the organization that he works for, but his own personal space, about transgender rights. And he got a lot of flack for that. And the discussion was on the Yonkers Voice page was, look, you may not agree with this individual, but he has the right to post that defending transgender people on his own page. Yes. And there was a call, he should be fired. He can't. But what would be your opinion on that?
My opinion is that that he has the right to say that. From what you're describing to me, I think when we cross the line, if somebody was posting something different that was threatening to the lives of people who are transgender, then you were getting into that yelling fire in a crowded theater scenario. That is a much more challenging issue. But That was not the case with Jimmy Kimmel. This was just simply a commentary on the day's news, basically, and not advocating violence of any shape or form. So I think we have to recognize the different gradations and nuances of speech. But overall, the Supreme Court, from what I understand as a citizen, has always erred on the side of free speech unless you're really threatening other people, and that can result in bodily harm or death. Then we have a problem.
What about you? You came from a news background, as did I, because we both worked together. Now, there was, if you recall, there was kind of always an issue of free speech in news stories. You know, in other words, you couldn't put, if somebody's doing a live shot and somebody jumps behind them and curses or holds up a sign that was considered to be, you know, not particularly politically correct, that shot was cut out.
Right.
That shot was eliminated. So does it get, do the rules change, the rules about free speech change when a news organization is presenting a news story?
Well, as we know, there was just a suit against CBS for allegedly editing the story that. So this is, now you're getting into a murkier area of a corporation's rights under certain perspectives of the law. As of recently, corporations and individual rights are a little bit murky as well. But I would say that's really kind of a case-by-case basis. At the end of the day, news operations have the ability to edit as they wish. But I think if it becomes a concerted effort to squelch reasonable free speech about a topic, then that might get into a problematic area.
So is it fair to say that we are in an era now where the application of free speech is not an even application? There seems to be a lot of picking and choosing where free speech stands and where it doesn't stand, or where it can be applied and where it can't be applied.
In my opinion, as long as you're not creating a threat to anybody's safety and well-being to their lives, it should be absolute. It should be absolute. That's
the issue. If it becomes, okay, that's a good point. The free speech should be absolute according to the Constitution. But how do we get to that point where there is an equal distribution of free speech? And what is the mechanism for that?
I think we're going through a period of testing right now. That's what this Jimmy Kimmel situation represented, and other situations that are popping up and will pop up. So we're learning about our tolerance, our ability, what the parameters are. How much can people accept or not accept about free speech? But I think that, as long as there are ideas that are being put out, even when it's something as insidious as neo-Nazis demonstrating in an area of Holocaust survivors, we have to err on the side of caution to allow this to be spoken. Otherwise, we're setting a precedent that only results in more restrictions, and this thing that we value in our Constitution called free speech goes out the window. And then you start to enter into a realm of totalitarianism. That's something we want to avoid like the plague.
Yeah, you might weigh in on this kind of there is a kind of vendetta on the part of the White House against certain news reporters and news organizations that have allegedly not portrayed the White House in a good light. And it'll be interesting to see how that will follow up going forward. Will we see more situations where news stations will no longer be dependent upon the FCC, and they'll just say, okay, you know something, we'll go to cable and we don't have to petition for a license? Perhaps.
I mean, that's a question that's probably better asked to executives in the people who are doing the business work of these networks and so on. They're going to weigh various consequences. Usually it's the bottom line financially, what makes sense to them. With that as a criteria, the bottom line, These standards that we revere become a little bit more wobbly because very often it's the dollar that speaks, right? So I don't know. I don't know the answer to that. I can't predict that future. All I know is that when our government tells us what we can or cannot say, then we're getting into some really, really challenging territory. And again, my inclination is let people speak their hearts and minds as long as they're not attacking or destroying other people or making them feel like they're in jeopardy, because we come out stronger from it. It's sort of like life. When you have a challenge in life, there's that old expression, what doesn't kill you makes you stronger, right? And that's what I see in this, that this strengthens the muscle of civil liberties, our tolerance, our ability to understand. And, once you squelch somebody else's speech, there's a loss of information on some level.
On either side.
On either side, of course. People on the left should be able to speak, people on the right should be able to speak. Ultimately, at the end of the day, we have to love each other as citizens of this amazing country and revere this We the People document, the Constitution, which is so advanced. I mean, the work that went into it, the thought that went into creating this, from all the founding fathers, Madison, Hamilton, Jefferson, Adams, Benjamin Franklin, all of these key players used tremendous thought, tremendous depth to come up with this.
True, but we're in a different era now, and I know you've participated in a lot of, you've been active, shall we say. What can people do now to be proactive? And again, we're not showing a bias. We want to show people from each side, from the right or the left. What can people do to come to terms with the rights of free speech?
Revere this document. That's what this flag is about. Revering this document. This is the essence.
But on an active basis.
On an active basis, just listen. That's, there's speech and there's listening, right? It's a two-way street. It's a cyclical process. So there are opinions that I have that are conservative. I'm progressive in some areas and conservative in others. I've gotten those conservative points of view by listening to other points of view, even though I might not have initially agreed with them or liked them. At the end of the day, I opened my ears. I said, let me hear what these people have to say. Is there validity? Is there substance to what they say? I could cite specific points of view that I have, certain freedoms that people on the left may not like so much. And I have positions on the left that the people on the right might not like so much. That's called an open mind. That's really the theme of this whole subject.
That's the key. That's the key. So we're drawing towards the end of our interview, but you raised a good point, and that is the open mind. And perhaps a lot of the turmoil of today's political issues are based on closed minds. I mean, we see a lot of opposition from the left that at some point can be very provocative and very damaging. And at the same time, we see a lot of resistance. Well, the resistance is mostly on the left, but we also see a lot of aggression on the right that pushes the left to that position. And, at some point, there needs to be people at the table putting aside that tension and saying, how can we work together to preserve the right to free speech so that we can all talk, not just the loud voice on the left or the loud voice on the right.
Well, what I'm about to say, because of my occupation, which works with people's minds to help people feel better about themselves and to do better, that I think that actually a lot of this that's going on, this is a show unto itself, but a lot of what's going on is really an emotional and even psychological challenge for us in this 21st century. I think people are feeling uncertain about the future as we enter into this very, very challenging time of the 21st century. And people people's emotions start to fly a little bit too strong in these things. We need to be logical about this. But a lot of what's fueling this, free speech or not free speech and other issues that we're facing are really emotional by nature. I think we are challenged as human beings in this 21st century. A lot is hitting us: social media, cell phones, 1,000 channels that we're watching. Our minds are fragmented, and it makes people anxious, it makes people emotional, and then they start to get into their camps, which become oppositional, and that's not healthy. We have to learn that we're on the same team. This document sums it all up, the flag sums it up, but the document really shows, again, the structure of how to think about these things. And I think we have to revere this above all, this beautiful document called the Constitution.
How could we end it better? With that is it. Thank you, Bob Pargament. And folks, keep watching for more episodes on Yonkers Voice.